Welcome to Living Out Loud with your host, Jess Phillips, where we talk all things addictions, codependency, relationships, and the good, bad, and ugly in between. Hey, podcast family, it's Jess, and welcome to the Living Out Loud podcast. I have some very exciting news. My new ebook, Breaking Free, Healing from Narcissistic Abuse and Reclaiming Your Power, is officially available for download. I wrote this ebook for anyone who was raised by narcissistic or emotionally immature parents, for anyone who has suffered through the silent treatment, for anyone who was called oversensitive, or for anyone who grew up emotionally starved. I wrote this ebook for the same kids who turn into adults chasing the same type of love they were shown growing up. For individuals who find themselves in psychologically abusive relationships where they are gaslit, punished, and then find themselves begging for connection after their abusive partners pull away. I know firsthand how insane this can make you feel and the impact it can have on your mental health. And I'm here to tell you that you're not crazy and you're definitely not alone. I have poured everything I know about narcissistic abuse into this ebook, and it's packed with exercises and journal prompts to help you go from hopeless, anxious, and depressed to empowered, boundaried, and clear about who comes in or out of your life. This ebook will explain the different types of narcissists, the many ways abuse can appear, and help you set boundaries and get your confidence back. If you're ready to jump in, you can find the ebook download link in the show notes of this episode, or you can head on over to my website, www.jessphillipscoaching.com, and purchase it straight from there. And if you're looking to do more intensive one-on-one work with me live each week, you can head on over to the contact page of my website and fill out a submission form. Now, let's get back to the show. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Living Out Loud with your host, Jess Phillips. So today we have another hot topic sent in by a listener, which, to be honest, I kind of feel like a bit of a hypocrite talking about, because the topic is being too hard on ourselves, or why are we so hard on ourselves? And listen, I just got to call myself out on this one. I'm very hard on myself. It's something that I try to use as like a superpower now, and that I don't just view as something like super negative anymore, but it is something that I have struggled with my entire life. So I'll just call myself out so I don't feel like a hypocrite the entire episode. But let's talk about it. Let me have a sip of my herbal tea because I'm officially cut off from caffeine for the day because I've had way too much, but usually makes for a good episode. So here we go. So why are we hard on ourselves? Why are some people naturally more forgiving? Why do some people just kind of have this ability to be like, it was an oopsie? I remember when I first started to work at the therapy clinic, there was this French child psychologist, and she was quite intimidating. She was very smart. She had a PhD, very large language barrier. My French is not great, and she like didn't even speak a lick of English. So we just kind of did a lot of like nodding and smiling at each other. And I was walking downstairs with a client, and we didn't have signs on the door at the time. Now we have these like vacant, whatever, occupied signs on the door, but before we didn't. And I was talking with the client as we were walking down the stairs, probably like giggling or whatever, I don't know. And I burst the door open, and she was in session with someone, and I literally thought I was going to die. I just froze, and I was like staring at them. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I shut the door, and then we went into the other room. I swear I could not stop thinking about it. Like, I don't even know how I did the session because I was just spiraling in my mind. Like, how could you do that? You're such an idiot. Oh my God, you're going to be in trouble. Like, really this like old sense of you're gonna be in trouble, which is like quite common for me, or like something really bad is gonna happen when, I don't know, I never really like, I got in trouble, but never to like these extremes that I feel in my core. But anyways, and then I remember talking to the owner about it. I don't know if it was that same day or the next day, and I told her what happened, and she just looked me dead in the eyes. She goes, Jess, you made an oopsie. It's okay. And it was the way she said it. And I swear, I felt like a child in that moment. My whole nervous system just completely calmed down. I was like, yeah, it was just an oopsie. I didn't mean to do it. I didn't do it on purpose. It was just an accident. But like I was spiraling over that one. So yeah, this topic made me think of that. But Yeah, really, like, why are we so hard on ourselves? And more importantly, how do we turn that into fuel, or how can we turn the volume down on it at least? And, it really goes back. I should just preface every single episode with like, it all stems from your childhood. I should just do a series on like, it's all your fucking parents' fault, you know? It's not, but it does come from that, right? It's really this idea of, did you grow up with a critical parent? Or worse, did you grow up with a parent who didn't feel good enough for themselves? Because that one's going to travel down, right? Kids are listening to what you're saying. And I've talked about this before. Thank God neither of my mom reads my newsletter, but my parents don't listen to my podcast, thank God. I mean, I love them dearly, but actually I'll give this one to my mom. My mom was always she's critical towards herself, kind of like in the vanity department, but she was always very encouraging with me. I remember like when I started gaining weight after puberty, she would like help me prep foods, and like she was really encouraging. She never said anything criticizing. But my poor dad, on the other hand, and I don't even think he knew any better, but one of the biggest things about the inner critic, or not feeling good enough, or always striving for more or different, or being somewhere, anywhere that you're not currently at, right? Like continuing to move that goalpost is a direct result of not being able to sit in the present moment. And I don't think anybody out there chooses to not sit in the present moment. They're not like, oh, I really want to escape. I mean, sometimes, but not on the regular. They're not like, oh, I really want to dissociate right now, and I really just want to not be proud of myself and escape this moment. It's again a strategy. It's a learned behavior. And my dad, I'm convinced, had a few undiagnosed things back in the day, but we'll, leave that for another episode. But let's take undiagnosed ADHD, for example. Undiagnosed ADHD, especially left untreated, doesn't have to be necessarily treated by medication. Medication does help and can help, but even behavioral techniques, even just the acknowledgement that it's there, you can watch somebody with untreated ADHD, they're unable to stay with you, especially if they're not interested, right? If they're not interested in what you're saying or what you're teaching, they're constantly interrupting you, they're finishing your sentences, they're waiting for you to stop talking so that they can talk, and they just want out. It feels like torture. The mind, especially if it's like a hyperactive ADHD rather than, more of like the inattentive daydreaming type, those types might be able to stay in the moment a little bit more, or at least look like they're in the moment because they're off in la la land. But the hyperactive ones really want out because the body's working overtime, the mind's working overtime. And unless they're doing, that's why so many people with ADHD or untreated ADHD, or even recovering people that are used to excitement or like high risk situations, watch, they'll get sober, and what happens? They turn into fucking Ultraman runners. They do Ironmans. They do insane things because they don't enjoy the stillness, which is fine, right? Like none of this is a bad thing. Like if you want to go off and do, I'm one to talk. I'm always setting new goals. I put one goal down, I accomplish something, and I don't even sit with it. I'm like, next, right? So, but it's less to do, like I am able now to sit in the present moment. I enjoy being in my own company. I enjoy reading and researching. Like I'm not squirrely anymore, like always trying to escape the moment. But when it does come down to being proud of myself or goals or things like that, I can quickly continue to move that goalpost and not really sit with, being happy for myself or proud of myself. But, I'm convinced that, my dad had a lot of these things growing up, and he was very go, go, go. So even, for example, we would have a flight to Florida, let's say, which is like not this big international, like you're not flying to Japan, you're not flying to Australia, We would be at the airport so early because he was so nervous inside. He was so nervous, like, what's going to happen if we miss this flight? And I'm like, yeah, what happens? It's not that big of a deal, right? But inside he was so restless, and we actually had a good talk about this. I think it was like a couple of years ago now. We had this one little mini heart to heart, which I'll hold dearly inside. And he talked about how much he overvalued and cared about what other people thought of him. So a lot of it was, I'm not going to say image because he's a good guy inside, like he wanted to do well and he wanted to, but he really overemphasized the perfectionist thing and what other people thought. And I think over time it became more important or more all encompassing than what he thought about himself or what family or people close to him thought about him. And I don't think he was able to kind of decipher the difference between the two. So it was always because then we start bordering into being others focused, right? So when we're others focused, we can't be self focused. So he was often like, very nervous and having to leave to go to work super early, even though he like basically worked for himself. Interactions with other people in traffic, parking spots. This guy, man, we'd go to the mall, he'd park fucking 2 kilometers away. And I'm like, why are we so far? He's like, because we're leaving the spots for the people that need them. I'm like, I need them. I don't want to walk this far. What are we doing here? So it was like on one hand very sweet, but on the other hand, like I think it bordered into like a little bit of extremism where there was an overemphasis on making other people comfortable on before himself. So I think it's a lot of learned behavior. Again, I think individuals that grow up in more secure homes end up developing a stronger sense of self, this quiet confidence about them, that they're not in constant competition with other people. They're not struggling with perfectionism or also to not getting praise only for achievement. So that can be a really big one for people who struggle with feelings of not being good enough today, is that they only learned how to get validation, or not that they learned, they only got validation when they did something well. So say, for example, they got an 85 on an exam and it was like, well, why didn't you get a 95? Or they did well in a sport or whatever it was. And having a parent always saying, yeah, but, or let's try harder next time. Or so what we're essentially telling a kid in that time is what you just did is not good enough. And I can understand, like, if you're flunking math and you're coming home with a 30 every semester, okay, we got to talk about getting a tutor. But an 85, a 75, like these are good marks. These are good marks. I'd like to see half the parents try to do the homework that's out there today. I don't even think I would be able to do grade 5 math right now. It's very complicated. So this idea of maybe having a critical parent, listening, to what your parents are saying. I remember this woman and she was constantly ripping her body apart in front of her daughters. And I didn't say anything to her, obviously, at the time, but I remember thinking about it, like, what's going to happen to these girls when they become teenagers? The mom was constantly saying, I'm fat, I need a nose job, I'm this, I'm disgusting, I'm getting old, my skin, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, whoa. Stuff like that is not good for little minds to be absorbing because they're going to look at themselves and God forbid they don't like something about themselves, which I don't know anybody who doesn't, and they're going to start talking to themselves in the same way. So it's a very, very, very dangerous game. So a lot of the not feeling good enough today can come from a critical home or a parent who was really talking poorly about themselves or never good enough for themselves. And I think probably the most important one is what I mentioned earlier, the inability to be present. I had this moment the other day. I can't remember what made me think of it, but the older I get, the more I start to sound like my mother. And I've told her this, and she laughs every time. But I was doing stuff and I finished like the last thing on my list, and I was like, well, I'm glad we got that done. We got all that done. And my mom used to say that all the time. That's good. We did a good job. We got that done. We got that done. This woman would go from like painting the house to washing the walls to gardening to grocery shopping to she never stopped. And the same thing with my dad. He never stopped. He was up at like 4:30 a.m. at the golf club by 5:30 a.m., come home, take a 20-minute power nap, go to the gym for like 2 hours, come home, eat dinner, watch Coronation Street, and go to bed. So, on one hand, we can look at this like these are very productive people, but then also, on the other hand, what are you running from? What happens when you stop? There's nothing wrong with being productive. There's nothing wrong with goals. I'm very oriented. I'm very productive, but I know how to stop. And I don't feel squirrely the majority of the time when I'm like relaxing in the evening or whatever. I don't have these like highly critical thoughts that are like, "Oh my God, you're lazy." Now, on sick days, let's say, when I'm like kind of paralyzed and I can't do anything, yeah, that doesn't feel too good for me, but that's more like energy, I think, trapped in my body. But looking at my parents now, like what would have happened if they kind of just slowed down a little bit? And I think my mom can do a better job of that, but my dad was very, very, very restless. So what happens is that you're not teaching the child the fundamental importance of being present. And if the parent's nervous system isn't regulated, it's extremely hard for your kid's nervous system to be regulated. It's almost a stamp guarantee. If you're dysregulated, your kid's going to be dysregulated because that's where we learn it, right? 0 to 10, we learn that our home is the safe base. We learn that we can breathe. We learn, and if it's not those things for you, then you're just going to come up with other coping mechanisms, and some are great and some are not great, right? Like people turn into workaholics, they turn into drug addicts, they turn into whatever it is because they're constantly running because they've never been taught how to just chill. So paying attention to those things, like what happens for you when you slow down. Were you allowed to slow down as a kid? Was it safe for you to just take a pause and talk about how you were feeling? And also too, like that's really where it would come from, but that's not going to be helpful for this episode because I mean, it's helpful to acknowledge where it comes from, but people really want to know like, okay, thanks a lot. You say everything comes from childhood, but what do we do about it, right? Like, what do we do now if we have this dysregulated nervous system and we have this inner critic that has developed? And that's really the meat and potatoes because learning to not be hard on yourself. And it's so interesting too, because the people that I know that are pretty hard on themselves, they're not hard on others, which I used to be. Like when I was the hardest on myself in my 20s, like very ego filled, I was way harder on other people. And now I've softened that approach, but the people that I know that are pretty tough on themselves, they're very forgiving to others, and I always find that quite interesting, right? So it's like, why do we take out the baseball bat for ourselves? But then we would never talk to somebody. Like, I would never talk about somebody's body the way I talk about my body. It's wild. And it's like, why would I do it to myself then? Right? Like if there was a 5-year-old version of me standing in front of me, I would never speak like that. But it's just weird. Now I'm just like this 39-year-old avatar of myself, and I feel like I can just rip myself to shreds, and that's okay. It's really not okay. Guys, I'm so highly caffeinated. I don't even know if I should be recording episodes right now, but here we are. Here we are. So this inner critic, right? What does this inner critic sound like? And what do we do with it? And the very tricky thing about the inner critic is it almost pretends, it almost morphs as if it's something trying to protect you. So it's like, I've seen this a lot in relationships. I've fallen into this trap in the past in relationships. Let me self-sabotage or let me push you away before you can push me away. Let me hate myself so that you don't have to hate me, basically. That's how powerful the inner critic can be. And it feels like it's protecting us, this kind of like egoic version of us. And I've mentioned this before in a past episode. One of my favorite quotes from Brene Brown, she says something along the lines of, if you walk around the world looking for evidence that you don't belong, be careful because you're going to find it. And that's the thing with the inner critic, right? If I constantly feel like I'm not good enough or I'm never going to be happy with my body, or people are judging me, or I'm never going to be happy in a relationship, whatever it is, I'm actually going to start subconsciously attracting those things. So that's the really tricky part of all of this, is that I fundamentally believe like the thoughts that we're telling ourselves all day, we start to manifest that in our external environment. It's if you take hoarding, for example, right? A lot of people they're like mesmerized by hoarding, and they're thinking like, how could anybody ever get to that place? Well, it's a direct result of their inner world, right? So say there's a mental health breakdown, there's a psychosis, there's something going on, there's something not balanced inside. And how does the person take control of that? Well, they start to control their external environment. Same thing with binge eating, gaining weight, right? You see these shows, My 600-Pound Life, blah, 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 and people are shocked. How could you get there? Well, quite easily, right? You take enough trauma, you take enough undiagnosed mental health issues, you take somebody who feels stuck or misunderstood or, wants that comfort, and you can easily push past to that point. Same thing with drug addiction. So many people have so many aggressive opinions today on our homelessness problem here in Montreal, and they give very opinionated statements such as like, why can't they just go get jobs or get them off the streets or whatever? And it's like, it's so much deeper than that. It's so much deeper than that. And I think that's what so many people don't understand, is that the amount of trauma that's underneath the hood there, the amount of trauma that has to happen, the inner critic, the mental health issues, the breakdown of all of that's what leads to their external environment looking like that. It's not a choice, it's not a decision. Drug addiction that gets so out of control. These are the things that lead there. So it's why it's so important too that people have access to mental health support, that people are able to talk. I've even realized that so much, especially in the past year. Like, I'm just becoming increasingly more vulnerable with people because I never realized how much I was masking and how much I was keeping things inside. I would tell myself like, okay, you have to be like perfect now because you're, in the field, or you're on social media, or you're making this content, and everything, all the ducks have to be in a row. And it's like, no, like life doesn't work that way, not mine anyways. And the more that I would hide these things, and the more that I wouldn't tell people how I felt, A, I wasn't leaving any room for anybody to come in and challenge some of my beliefs. And B, I was suffering in silence. And if you suffer in silence long enough, something bad is going to happen, right? There's going to be an explosion of some sort. And sometimes it really takes like a friend to remind me, like I was talking with one of my good friends a couple of weeks ago, and I'm not going to lie, I've had a little bit of a crash burnout the past couple of months. It has not been easy and has not felt good. So I'm on a little breaky, even though I've been recording like 3 episodes today, but whatever. This is fun. This is soothing. This is soothing. It's not work. But I was speaking to him, and he was like, Jess, he's like, the amount that you do in a day, he's like, some people don't even do that in a week. He's like, the newsletter, the podcast, seeing 6 to 8 clients a day, exercising, food prep. He's like, girl, you gotta, like, you have to either acknowledge that or chill. And I needed to hear that because I don't know what it is about my brain. And I don't know if it's because I've set up this big life or these big goals, but my brain constantly, and it's not even a criticism, but it just constantly tells me that I'm not doing enough. Like, even what I'm doing, it's not nearly, and I don't know if it's like this potential thing of where I think I can be or where I want to be, but I always feel like I'm falling short and I'm not doing enough. It's actually a bit spooky. So it's really important for me to, I used to have a sponsor that would tell me that. She goes, Jess, no matter what, just keep telling on yourself. Tell on yourself. Tell on yourself to somebody, anybody. Get those thoughts out of your mind, because that's really where that inner critic is going to grow, right? We're going to keep it inside. It's just going to be us talking, and I can take that to whatever extreme that I want to. But as soon as I tell on myself and I air it to somebody, they have the opportunity to share, or they remind me of something, or they say like, when we were having this conversation, he's like, we hire multiple people to do what you're doing all by yourself. He's like, even take one of the things that you're doing. He goes, that would be somebody's job. And you're just doing all of it across the board. And I was like, oh, like I didn't even kind of think of that or consider that. So it was a very helpful conversation to have. So this idea of like, how loud is this critic and is it taking over? Is it like first things first, you want to check, is it impacting your relationships, right? Because somebody who's very critical of themselves or, never feels good enough, we can often project. We can often push people away. I was the queen of doing that before where I wouldn't let anybody get close. I was a nightmare in relationships. I just wouldn't let them get close. The wall was up. Even with friendships, it took me like 10 years in recovery to start letting the wall down. I have one best friend, and she's been my best friend since we were in diapers. And I got really lucky with her that we hung out until we were like 11 or 12. And then her dad got transferred all over the world and we never saw each other when I was using. Because if this girl, and she's sweet as pie, she's a little angel. I mean, she drank and stuff, but she's just a very sweet, normal girl. If she had witnessed me when I was using, I don't know if she would have ever wanted to talk to me again. And we never saw each other again until after I got sober. And then she was moving back to Montreal, and I went to pick her up at the airport, and we reconnected, and we were just the same as we were kids. We're just like that together. I don't know what it is. I feel very blessed. I feel very lucky. I know a lot of people don't have that experience, but I've never had my wall up with her. Maybe a little bit at some points, like when I moved to Toronto and I was really like, I don't know, going through it. But other than that, like I'm pretty open with her. But other people, like women in recovery or just people that I would meet, my God, it was just like arm's length. Everybody stay away from me. It was like my protection. And then over the years, I was just like, I don't want to live like this anymore. I don't want to keep people away. I don't want this defensive wall up. What am I protecting myself from? It's up to me to be able to read the room, to pick the safe people. So I've been really working on that, especially in the past year. And I've had some really beautiful experiences with people, like really letting people see the real me, and it feels a lot safer. And now if I'm ever going through something, it's a lot more, it's just like second nature well, second nature is a stretch. It's a lot easier to pick up the phone and let somebody know how I'm feeling or what I'm going through so that I don't have to keep it all inside. And then another thing too is like this acceptance piece. We were taught a lot about acceptance in recovery, and it kind of annoyed me because it was like, acceptance is the answer to all your problems. And only until you're able to accept something, you'll be free of the mental torture of whatever. And I was like, my God. Now, very hocus pocus to me, but it's actually true because the more that I don't accept something, the more I'm going to suffer with it. So let's say, for example, even in the past couple of months, everybody could see that I was burning out at work. I was pushing too hard. I wasn't myself. I was really off. And I just kept telling myself, like, don't be lazy. Don't be lazy. Don't cancel clients. Don't this. If I were to take a relaxing evening at home, I would feel a lot of conflict and frustration and guilt. So I was really pushing against what was happening instead of just accepting and saying like, hey, people are trying to support you right now. They're encouraging that you just relax, take it easy, do whatever you need to do. And it's okay to feel this. It's okay to be burnt out. It's okay to be in a bit of a depression. It's okay. It's okay. Like it doesn't have to be this tragic thing that I make it in my head. So I do think acceptance is a lot more helpful with people with a very strong inner critic, because if you start feeding that monster, right? Like it has an insatiable appetite. Like where is the finish line? If this isn't good enough, then the next thing's not going to be good enough, and that's not good enough, where it's like, why don't we ask for feedback? I never usually do that. I'm like, well, what did you think? Or, did you like this project or presentation or whatever? I just keep it all to myself and I'm like, no, no, it was crap. You got to do more. You got to do more. Instead of saying, like, hey, I really tried my best with this thing. And again, like, would you talk to somebody the way that you speak to yourself? Probably not. Probably not at all. So, really shifting that self talk, that inner guide, and using, I talk about this a lot. I was always called sensitive growing up. You're so sensitive. You're so sensitive. You're so sensitive. I grew up in a home where people did not feel or talk about their feelings. And I was the one that got magically gifted with no emotional insulation, and I could feel everything. I could pick up on everybody's moods. I was scanning for everybody's moods. I was like, uh-oh, mom's fighting, mom's mad at dad, dad's mad at mom. I gotta fix this. What am I gonna do? Blah, 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 blah. I was always not in my body, and I was always hyper attuned and hyper aware of other people's problems. Hence, probably why I'm a therapist today. But what happens is I have no relationship with self, and I have no one to go to when I need to calm myself down. So that becomes this learned behavior. And if you're constantly focused on what other people are going to think of, your performance or your outcome, you lose the opportunity to say, like, hey, do I think I did well on that? Because I know, and I'm sure you guys know, I know when I half-ass something. Sometimes you have to in life. Sometimes, I mean, there was papers that I would write fucking night before, and I'm like, that was garbage, Jess. Like, this just was not, I didn't put any effort into it. It was a last minute thing. I procrastinated, and that was that. And that's okay. It's okay to highlight things like that. But if I work on something for 3 weeks and everybody else thinks it's good, and I'm still telling myself that it's not good and it's garbage and I should have done more, then I have that major kind of inner critic problem. So it's important. And actually my supervisor at the clinic helps me a lot with this, and she's like, girl, you got to learn how to celebrate yourself more. Celebrate yourself. Go celebrate. I'm like, what do you mean celebrate myself? I know how to celebrate others. I'm great. I'm great at party planning. I love other people's birthdays. I love finding like really special things that they tell me that they like or that we noticed at a store, and I'll go and get it for them. It's fucking wild, actually. I love making other people feel special, but when it comes to myself, I'm not that great at it. So, for example, a couple of weeks ago when I got one of my licenses, I went and I bought myself flowers, and it actually worked. It didn't work that night because I was a bit grumpy, but every day besides when Sully started to eat them, and then I thought he was going to die and I was going to take him to the vet because he was throwing up everywhere. Apparently they're quite poisonous, so I put them on the kitchen counter. And every morning I would wake up and I would see those fresh flowers, and I was like, "Oh, this is nice. This is nice." So it's like we have to celebrate ourselves. And I remember once years ago, actually, she's been my supervisor for many years now, and a very important mentor in my life, and she's taught me a lot of things. And I love it because, like, the truth is, a lot of it is wisdom, right? We're only going to learn. She's older than me. A lot of it is life lessons. And I mean, if we all had the ability to stop ourselves from spiraling in the moment, then we would do it, right? It's only until we're like 50 and looking back and we're like, oh, we should have enjoyed this more or slowed down more. It's like the tale as old as time. Everybody says that. It's just very hard to do in the moment. But she did ask me at one point, she goes, Jess, she goes, you're going to be hearing about, trauma all day, tragic things all day, depression, anxiety, just tragic things. And she goes, you're really going to need to balance out your joy factor. She goes, how much joy are you currently experiencing in your life? And I was like, whoa, joy's a big word. Joy. I really had to think about it. I was like, I don't know. I don't know how much joy I'm experiencing, because it's also a bit twisted as an addict, because a lot of the things that brought me joy I can't do anymore, which sounds fucking wild to say out loud, but that was my mentality for a long time. It was like I loved doing cocaine. That was quite joyful for me until it wasn't. Or like binge eating, or like eating a ton of sugar, or like really good food. That's really joyful for me. But then after, I cannot handle what it does to me after. So I had to start getting like really crafty with joy. And what I did realize was I love laughing. Laughing is probably the most joyful thing that I can experience. I'm very grateful. I have extremely funny friends. I have a funny family. I've booked quite a few comedy shows already this summer. Dancing brings me a lot of joy. Already done a significant amount of that this year. So like, these things I had to start getting more creative and asking myself, like, okay, are you, because it can't just be serious all the time, problems all the time, work, make money all the time. And like, that's another thing too, right? We get hijacked by these false ideas. And I remember one of my false ideas when I graduated school, I graduated with $1,000 of debt. And I told myself while I was in school and I was taking out the student loans to pay for the tuition and pay for the books, there was a couple of months I couldn't even pay for my rent. And I was like borrowing on the loan to pay for that. It was just wild. God forbid I asked for help, and I was just too stubborn to do so. And I told myself, Jess, when you graduate, this was a couple years ago now, when you graduate, do not panic and do not go on a crazy tailspin paying off that loan. And what did I do? Totally panicked and totally just went like AWOL trying to pay down that loan, because the inner critic or this voice will often tell me things like, you're free. And on one hand, logically it does, right? Nobody really wants to be in debt, but my happiness does not come from being debt free, right? So if I'm just going to be miserable and trying to pay down that debt as soon as possible to see a zero on my bank account, I'm going to get to the zero and watch. I'm not going to feel that much different. Now, do we want to be financially responsible? Yes. Do I want to buy property? Yes. Do I want to save? Yes. All of these things are good, but I can't have the blinders on. And that's what can happen if the inner critic is driving you. It tells you false things like you will be happy when. Like the relationship, you will be happy once you get the relationship. And it's like, no, you won't. Yeah, it'll be nice to meet someone. Yeah, you'll share some cool experiences. But once the pink cloud wears off, you're dealing with another faulty human, and it's work. A lot of it is work. It's not, nobody's going to come and release that kind of inner turmoil that you're in. We really have to start to get crafty on what we do to manage that. And a lot of what I've studied over the years, especially getting sober, is this idea of killing the ego, right? Like I do really believe, like they talk a lot about God and higher power and giving your life and your will over to something outside of yourself. It never really resonated with me too much, that, but I do believe in a higher self and a lower self. And I can feel when I'm vibrating in either of those departments. And now I try to challenge the thought of like, oh, when you like, I'm on a crazy fitness journey right now. And it's like, oh, when you get super fit again, then you'll be okay. And it's like, no, you won't, because you've been there many times. And I still know how to be depressed with washboard abs. Will it be nice to be fit? Yeah. Do I want to be fit going into my 40s? Yeah. Do I value eating well and fitness? Yes, but it can't be the be all end all, because if I play those games with myself, I'm just going to be quite disappointed. So really reflecting on the way that you talk to yourself and start to challenge either the old ideas or the false ideas or what really sounds like an egoic idea. So the way that I break down ego ideas compared to kind of like higher self or spiritual ideas is that ego ideas sound quite black and white. There's not a lot of gray. There's not a lot of compassion, very all or nothing statements. So I'll be happy when I'm, no good because I haven't lost the 50 pounds. I'm right. These very kind of overwhelming negative ideas, and they can confuse us and they can really make you feel like your happiness or your stillness or the idea to feel good enough lies in this goal. And it's confusing because goals are great. They do make you feel good and they do make you feel accomplished. But truthfully, what is the best part of a fitness journey, right? Like they did a research study on all the contestants on the show The Biggest Loser, and I think it was like 96% of them gained all the weight back. And it really made me think, right? And it was like, what is that? So, I mean, it was a god awful show anyways, but putting all these people on display, putting them on insane crash diets, these workout regimes, they're losing hundreds of pounds to get on stage and be like, wow, look at me. But then it's like, and then it stops. The show's over, the noise stops, you're not getting the attention anymore. You don't have fucking Jillian Michaels screaming down your throat anymore. So it's like, who's waking you up the next morning to go to the gym? I remember my counselor used to say this to me in rehab, and it used to fucking it still haunts me till this day. He goes, if I had a video camera and I was following you around all day, what would I think of your actions? And I think of that, when I really don't want to do something today, and it's like, man, who's going to prep all the food that I bought from Costco yesterday? I have to do it. If I want certain things, I got to do those things, right? Who's going to take me to the gym this morning? No one. I got to go there. So I find that's the character building stuff. It's like when I don't want to go to a recovery meeting or somebody asks me to speak, and my first instinct after 18 years is no. No, no, I don't want to. I'm busy. I'm tired, whatever. But I don't feed into that anymore. I say yes. I try to do the opposite of what my first thought is, because that's usually the less egoic thought. And and as cheesy and cliche as this about to sound, it's not about the weight loss. It's not about the diploma. It's not about the zero on the debt. It's the journey. And I want to puke just saying that, but it's fucking true. It's so true. Who did you become on the way of getting fit? Who did you become paying off $53,000 of debt? Who did you become after whatever goal that you went for, right? That's the meat and potatoes. That's really what we need to focus on, because you develop into a certain type of person based on your goals, based on your passions, based on your dreams. And that's really what we should be focused on. Because, yeah, is it going to feel good to finally wipe out that debt at the end of the year? For sure. But I just don't want to play that game, because immediately my mind's going to go to what next. And I really, 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 really don't want to look back at 60 and been like, man, you should have slowed down. You should have slowed down. You should have smelt the flowers. You should have looked in the mirror and said, you're cute. You should have said, you're cute in this outfit, even though you feel like you have a muffin top, right? I know because I hear it. I have so many old people in my life, and they tell me all the time. It's just really hard to do when you're in it. When you're in it, you're in it. And I'm convinced, and I've said this to you guys before, that the ego is just bigger when we're younger. 20s, 30s, 40s, even 50s for some people. Like, the ego is running the show. And then what happens? You get older, you get tired, you start to see your family growing, or grandkids or whatever. And it's like, I even see it with my nephews. It's just like, it's so cute. One of them's like almost 15, and it's just like, he tells me things, and I remember those high school problems, and because that's your whole life, they feel so real. It feels like everything in the moment, but it's so nothing. It's just a little blip, but it's so hard to tell him that, because he doesn't know that that's his whole life. So anyways, my God, I don't even know how long I've been talking. I don't know what time it is. I'm tired. I'm a little hungry. But I think we all just need to be a little bit more gentle on ourselves. And I think one of the best ways to get out of egoic thoughts is really to shine a light on them and to let people in on them. Because, like I said earlier, I remember when I was just really in my eating disorder. It was so bad. It was such a lonely time, and I just wasn't talking to anybody about what was going on. And it was just, I was at war with myself. And it was a really, really, really silent struggle. And I do not want to do that today. So, at least just have one person in your life that knows what's going on with you. Even as uncomfortable as it can feel, just tell on yourself. Tell people, I had to do it a few weeks ago. I reached out to a friend and I was just like, I am not feeling good. I'm not feeling good. I feel a bit spooked by the way I feel. And she was so supportive and she made some really good suggestions. And she also did a timeline too. And she asked questions about like certain things about last year versus this year. And it's the questions that I'm not able to ask myself, especially if I'm feeling bad. So, let people in on that inner critic. And also, to be careful with who you're spending your time with. There's a lot of people that have a lot of friends who are highly critical, or they gossip a lot, or they're just like yeah, just very negative. That's you're gonna pick up on that. You're gonna let all of that seep in as well. Whereas see how you feel when you hang out with like really positive people. Like when I'm just like peeing my pants laughing with my friends, like it's just the best. I just feel good. I feel free. When I go to recovery meetings, I leave, I feel good. When I go to the gym, I feel good. When I leave work and I laugh with the staff, I feel good. So it's like pay attention to who you're surrounding yourself by, because too much gossip, too much negativity, even the stuff that we're ingesting, like I was telling a friend this the other day. I was never one, like I've always had Instagram for work and I would post a lot of stuff, but I would never just scroll on it. And TikTok has like completely hijacked me. And if I'm really tired at night, like I'll just scroll on TikTok. And thank God the majority of it is positive stuff, like it's other therapists or it's cute like cat videos or dog videos or whatever. But then there's some like pretty like negative stuff that pops up and I'm like, whoa. And I'm especially thinking too, like there's very young people that are ingesting this information and it's just so not healthy for us. So anyways, let's summarize because I have just gone on a tangent here. Not feeling good enough. Acknowledge where it came from, just to get a little bit of peace around that. You didn't stand too much of a chance if you had very critical parents, right? That it's going to be absorbed your first 10 to 15 years of life, right? Before you develop your own sense of self and your own ego. A lot of that can stem from our childhood. And it's really acting the opposite of. If I want to say, oh, you're not at the weight that I want or whatever, and it's like, how about I say, like, you look good today. You look good in your outfit today. Your haircut looks good. Whatever it is, like try to do the opposite, compliment yourself instead of tearing yourself down. Let people know how you're feeling and surround yourself with more positive people that should uplift a lot of that kind of negative energy that we can experience when we're always feeling not good enough. And the truth is too, and again, this is very hard to practice in the moment, but like let's say you are at work and you submit something and your boss is just not happy with it and he rips it apart and you're just terrified. Always like play the tape forward. What is the worst thing that could happen? You get fired. That's the worst possible thing that could happen. Like rationally, are we going to get fired if our like behavior is good and we're showing up to work on time and we just did an oopsie or we just did something that somebody didn't like too much? Probably not. But also to remember, and this is going to go like a little bit deeper, it's like it should flow. Like I feel like I'm meant to be where I am. I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. If it didn't feel that way, I have to be able to say, okay, universe, like let's pivot. Like if you were to take away my whole coaching business, my whole therapy business right now, I'd figure it out. You can't take it away from me so badly that I'm going to be like lost and stranded and not, I'll go waitress. I'll go make money somehow. I've always been able to do that. So it's like when the fear takes over of not being good enough or somebody not being happy with you, ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen? Because those things are that's hard as well. Like I'll do a whole other podcast on rejection sensitivity, but if you have a sensitivity to rejection, or you've been raised by a narcissist, being rejected by somebody is probably the worst feeling in the world. But do you die from it? No. Are you going to get through it? Yes. Is your heart broken? 100%. But it's about having the ability to be like, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to survive. I have support, and really talking to yourself that way and just get up and just keep trying. That's all that we can do. And just start taking it easy on yourself. And I'm going to start taking it easier on myself. So that means that you have to do it too. I hope this episode was helpful, and I will see you guys in the next one. Love you. Bye. Thanks everyone for listening and supporting Living Out Loud. Be sure to tune in next week for another fun, juicy episode.